The season is lost, but the organization has just made a decision that has the entire league talking. While some experts are asking to protect the franchise quarterback, Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have other plans. And wait, because what is happening with our defensive coordinator is explosive. 3 news items that are going to define the future of this franchise. And I guarantee you that after hearing this, you are going to understand exactly where we are headed. Ready? Because this is getting intense. Look, after 6 consecutive losses, after falling to 3-8, after watching how this season slipped out of our hands like sand through our fingers, the question everyone is asking is, does it make sense for Jaden Daniels to return this year? And I will tell you something, the answer from the organization is going to surprise you. Because it turns out that, according to Dan Graziano from ESPN, the plan in Washington remains that Daniels returns to the starting lineup once the doctors clear the player from the elbow injury. Did you hear that? Once the doctors clear the player. We are not talking about waiting until 2026. We are not talking about protecting the player for the next season. We are talking about bringing the quarterback back this year. And I know what many of you are thinking. But why risk it? The season is already lost. We are not going to the playoffs anymore. Why expose the player to another injury? And look, I understand that concern. I truly understand it. Because this kid has already suffered 3 different injuries this year. 3 injuries that have cost multiple games. And every time we see the quarterback hit the ground, everyone holds their breath. But here comes what you have to understand. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN reports that although Daniels could return as soon as 3 weeks after the injury, meaning for Week 13 against Denver, the team has prepared for an absence of 5 to 6 weeks just in case. And do you know what that tells me? That they are being cautious, that they are not going to rush the process, that they are going to wait until the player is completely healthy. Now, why bring the quarterback back? Because this organization, with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters at the helm, does not believe in giving up, does not believe in throwing in the towel. And I ask you something. Do you want a quarterback who hides when things get tough? Or do you want a quarterback who faces adversity head-on? Because let me tell you something about Jaden Daniels. This kid took us to the NFC Championship game last year. This kid proved that there is what it takes to compete at the highest level. And now, when the whole world says the season is lost, the player wants to return. The player wants to compete. The player wants to prove to this city, to this organization, to this league, that there is no quitting. And look, I know there is risk. Of course there is risk. But do you know what? Football is risk. Every time a player steps on the field, there is risk. And if we as an organization start making decisions based on fear, then we have already lost before starting. Quinn has admitted multiple times that this season has not gone as expected, that the coach has been surprised by what has happened. And I believe that is honest. That is real. Because after going to the NFC Championship game in 2024, nobody predicted that this team would not make the playoffs. Nobody. But the injuries have complicated everything. The inconsistencies in the 3 phases of the game have been brutal. And now we are in a position where if we do not win every game remaining, we are going to end up with a losing record for the 5th time in 8 years. But the first under Quinn and Peters. And here's the thing. This situation has led to conversations about whether the team should give up to secure a better pick in the draft. But do you know what? That is not the mentality of this organization. Quinn and Peters have made it clear that they want to compete, that they want to win. And bringing Daniels back is part of that mentality. Because look, if we tell Jaden, stay seated, do not play, wait until next year, what message are we sending? We are saying that when things get tough, we give up. And that is not the message this organization wants to send. Now, is it complicated? Of course it is complicated. Fowler says the situation with Daniels is more complicated than it seems. Because with 3 different injuries this season and the current record of the team, shutting down the season remains a possibility. The important conversations about how to proceed are going to happen in the coming days. But I tell you this, if the doctors authorize the return, if the player is completely healthy, if there is no risk of a more serious injury, then the player has to play. Because this kid needs experience, needs reps, needs to keep developing. And staying seated on the bench is not going to provide any of that dot. And here's the reality. We as fans of the Commanders have suffered years of mediocrity, years of lost seasons, years of questionable decisions. But now, finally, we have a franchise quarterback. We have a general manager who knows what they are doing. We have a head coach with experience and credibility. And do you believe they are going to take a decision that puts the future of this franchise at risk? I do not believe it. I believe that if they bring Daniels back, it is because they are sure that it is the right thing, that the player is healthy, that the player can compete without additional risk, because at the end of the day, competition is what is going to win. And according to these reports, competition is going to win, which should not surprise anyone who has heard the coaching staff and the front office talk about what the Commanders want to be moving forward. So I ask you, do you prefer a quarterback who hides when things get tough, or one who faces adversity head-on? Do you prefer an organization that gives up, or one that always competes? Because I already know my answer, and I think you do too. If that surprises you, wait until you hear this. Because while we all talk about the return of Jaden Daniels, there is another explosive situation developing in the Commanders building, and it has to do with our defensive coordinator. Look, when Dan Quinn took the reins of the play calling on defense against the Dolphins, we all saw the improvement. It was not enough to win the game, but there was improvement. And that, my friends, is not a good sign for Joe Witt Jr. In fact, according to John Keane from ESPN, Witt is the figure under the most pressure in the entire organization. And I tell you something, this should not surprise anyone who has been paying attention, because the statistics do not lie. Since Witt took control at the start of last season, the Washington defense is ranked number 23 in points allowed per game with 24.5, and number 25 in yards allowed per game with 350.5. Did you hear that? Number 23 and number 25 in a league of 32 teams. That means we are at the bottom of the barrel. And look, I know that Witt and Quinn have a close connection from their time in Dallas. I know that Quinn was not going to remove the coordinator in the middle of the season. But after the season, that is another story completely different. Because here is the reality. Quinn prefers that others have the role of play caller. The coach has demonstrated that throughout a career. And when they asked Witt about the future, do you know what was said? We will worry about that later. Did you hear that? We will worry about that later. That is not the answer of someone who is sure of the job. That is not the answer of someone who has guarantees. That is the answer of someone who knows that the future is in doubt. And I believe that Witt saw the demotion coming. The coach is experienced enough to see how the defense responded to Quinn. Although the Dolphins are not exactly formidable opposition. Now, here's the key question. Does Witt want to stay as play caller, or would the coach be happy returning to a coaching role? Because look, the coach is an exceptional teacher, especially with the defensive backs. Nobody can deny that. But if the coach genuinely wants to be a head coach in the NFL someday, especially after getting an interview with the Jets in the last hiring cycle, then a new start could be the best solution for all parties. And I ask you something. Do you believe it is a coincidence that Quinn took the play calling right now? Do you believe it is a coincidence that the defense showed immediate improvement? I tell you this, there are no coincidences in the NFL. Everything is intentional. Everything has a purpose. Because the reality is this. Both Witt and Quinn are professional enough to do their jobs in the last 6 games before attention turns to other matters. Loyalty is something important for Quinn, but that loyalty cannot stand in the way of the team progress, and Witt probably knows that deep down. And if Quinn does not want to call the defensive plays in 2026, then the coach has to find someone who can. Someone who can take this defense from number 23 in the league to top 10. Someone who can maximize the talent we have on this roster. Because let me tell you something. We have talent on this defense. We have players who can compete. But when you are ranked 23 and 25 in the most important categories, that is not a talent problem. That is a scheme problem. That is a play calling problem. And look, I respect Joe Witt. I truly respect the coach. The work with the defensive backs has been solid. But being a great position coach does not necessarily make you a great coordinator. And the numbers prove it. So, what happens now? Well, everyone is going to do their job professionally until the end of the season. But after that, I believe we are going to see changes. Because this organization, with Peters and Quinn at the helm, is not going to settle for being mediocre. They are not going to settle for being at the bottom of the league. And if that means making difficult changes, even with someone with whom you have a personal connection, then those changes are going to be made. Because at the end of the day, this is a business, and the business of the NFL is winning. But that is nothing compared to what is coming. Because while we here in Washington deal with our problems, there is a story that connects directly with decisions that this organization made just weeks ago. It turns out that the 49ers have just signed Matt Gay. And do you know who Matt Gay is? It is the same kicker that we cut recently because the player could not connect from long distance. And now San Francisco picks the player up because their kicker, Eddie Pinheiro, is dealing with a grade 1 strain in the hamstring. And look, I know that this seems like minor news compared to the return of Daniels and the situation with Witt. But let me explain why this is important, because this speaks to the decisions that this organization is making, about how they are managing the roster, about how they are responding when things do not work. Gay has made 100 appearances in the regular season in a career. During that time, the player has delivered consistent performances from inside 50 yards and on extra point attempts. But here is the problem. In the last 18 field goal attempts from more than 50 yards, counting from last season, Gay has connected only 7 out of 18. That is less than 40%. And those struggles from long distance led Washington to cut ties. And in place, do you know who we signed? Jake Moody. The same Jake Moody that the 49ers had drafted and then cut. So basically, we swapped problematic kickers with San Francisco. Now, Pinheiro has played in 10 games for the 49ers. In that span, the player has missed 4 extra points, but has connected 22 of 22 on field goals. That includes connecting every one of the 6 FG attempts from 50 yards or more, meaning exactly the opposite of what Gay was doing. And here is the thing. Kyle Shanahan said that Pinheiro is week to week with the injury. So Gay is probably only going to be a short-term replacement. Once Pinheiro is healthy, the player is going to retake the role of kicker. Meanwhile, Gay is going to serve as the replacement. But I ask you something. Is it not interesting that we cut Gay for problems from long distance? And now San Francisco signs the player knowing exactly what the limitations are. Do you believe that they did not do their homework? Do you believe that they do not know that Gay has connected only 7 of 18 for more than 50 yards? Of course they know. But they also know that the player is a 31-year-old veteran with experience. That inside 50 yards, the player is reliable. That on extra points, the player is solid. And for a short-term replacement, that is enough. And look, the 49ers did their due diligence. They worked out 5 free agent kickers in recent days. Cade York, John Parker Romo, Anders Carlson, Tanner Brown, and Matt Gay. And after completing that process, they chose to go with experience. But here is what we should be asking ourselves. Did we do the right thing by cutting Gay? Has Moody been better? Because if we are going to make changes to the roster, those changes have to result in improvements. We cannot simply be changing for the sake of changing. And this connects with the bigger theme of this season. We have made changes. We have made adjustments. But have they resulted in victories? Have they resulted in tangible improvements? Because so far, the answer has been mostly no. So when I see that the 4-9 Earth sign gay, I do not just see a kicker transaction. I see a reminder that every decision we take has consequences. Every change we make needs to be evaluated. And we need to ensure that we are improving, not just changing for the sake of changing. So there you have it. Daniels returning. With under pressure. Gay in San Francisco. 3 news items that tell us exactly where we are as an organization and where we are going. And I tell you something. Despite everything, despite the 6 consecutive losses, despite the record of 3-8, despite all the injuries and the inconsistencies, I still believe in this organization. Because we have the right people in the right places. We have Peters. We have Quinn. And we have Jaden Daniels. Is it going to be easy? No. Are we going to win all the games that remain? Probably not. But are we going to compete? Are we going to fight? Are we going to demonstrate that this organization does not give up? I guarantee you yes. So now I ask you, do you agree with bringing Daniels back this year? Do you believe that Witt should stay as defensive coordinator? Did we do the right thing by cutting Gay? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your opinions. I want to know what you think. And if you want to keep receiving the latest news on the Commanders, deep analysis, unfiltered opinions, then you have to subscribe to this channel. Because I guarantee you that tomorrow we are going to have more news, more analysis, more content that you cannot miss. Hit like if you believe Daniel should return. Subscribe if you want Witt replaced. And share this video with all your friends who are fans of the Commanders. Because this community is a family. And families stay together in good and bad times. And remember, hail to the Redskins.